Oh, hello there coaches and canoeing enthusiasts. My name is Bailey Munro, and it's come to my attention that your zone team is suffering from the dreadful issue of performance anxiety. There are many reasons why this could be affecting your team, and by the end of this informative video, I will have outlined the correct mechanics of canoeing, the psychological factors that could be causing this problem, and how you could go about implementing some strategies to ultimately improve your situation. But for now, I'll see you in the gym! Yeah! Oh hi, didn't see you there. I was just too busy working up a sweat. I know why you've all joined me here today. It's because you're worried about the continuing issue of performance anxiety that is affecting your team's performance.
But what is performance anxiety, Mr. Munro?
I'm glad you asked, curious citizen. I'm glad you asked. Performance anxiety is when an athlete's performance is affected negatively due to mental factors such as perceived stress, which allows thoughts of self-doubt to enter an athlete's mind. Another name that performance anxiety is commonly referred to is choking. There are many reasons why an athlete can begin to suffer from performance anxiety, such as setting unrealistic goals and too low or high arousal levels. Overcoming a problem such as this can be challenging, but with some dedication to research, the problem can be resolved with ease. Now let me ask you this, can you ever remember a time when you had an important canoeing session the next day? And when you woke up, you felt as if you physically couldn't get out of bed? Did you feel like going to that canoeing session? Well, I've got news for you, buddy. You were suffering from a lack of motivation. Motivation is the mental driving force that keeps an athlete focused on driving to succeed in their chosen field. There are two types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. Extrinsic motivators tend to be rewards that actually give you something to show for it, whereas intrinsic motivators tend to be more about self-satisfaction and internal feelings as a reward. Whether your motivation is intrinsic or extrinsic is what ultimately dictates how you would go about setting goals for yourself. Here's a pro tip for all you coaches out there. Motivation is one of your most powerful tools, and if you can successfully keep your team motivated, they'll continue to grow and improve. Maintaining an appropriate level of arousal when an athlete participates in the sport of their choice is extremely important. Arousal is a mental state that is associated with many emotions that ultimately produce psychological changes in an athlete. These changes can differ depending on whether an athlete has a high or low level of arousal. For example, having too low of an arousal level can leave an athlete in a very lethargic state and reduce performance, whereas having too high of an arousal level can cause an athlete to become nervous and jittery, making them more likely to suffer from performance anxiety. As a coach, it is your duty to help an athlete find their optimum level of arousal. The optimum level of arousal is the ideal level of arousal an athlete should reach in order for them to achieve a peak performance. Depending on the chosen sport, the optimum level of arousal could differ. For example, a skeet shooter would need an extremely low level of arousal, whereas a more physical and quicker sport such as rugby league would need a higher level of arousal. There are many factors that could happen before, during, and even after a competition that could negatively affect arousal levels of athletes, and it is up to coaches to employ methods of controlling this. Imagery is one of the most crucially important psychological skills an athlete can utilize. Accurate imagery requires a little bit of imagination on the athlete's part, and when done correctly can provide outstanding results. Imagery is when an athlete imagines themselves performing a particular action or skill, making use of all their senses. When done accurately, imagery can be used to build confidence in an athlete by familiarizing them with the environment and skills that they will need in order to complete the activity, as well as motivating them by allowing them to recall times of success, such as winning previous competitions or besting a rival in a competition. Here's another pro tip for all you coaches out there. If you can get your athletes to master the art of visualization and imagery, it will surely reduce the chances of them suffering from performance anxiety and choking during a performance. Now, here's an example of a canoeist practicing their skills using imagery. Feedback mechanisms are important to an athlete as they grant the opportunity to improve their skills by being able to pick out the areas that need to be focused on. Feedback can be given to an athlete by their teammates, family members, supporters, and even themselves, but it is predominantly the coach's job to make sure correct feedback is given. Positive feedback can also be effective in helping to keep an athlete's motivation high. When proper feedback is given to athletes, it also directs them to how they could go about setting goals for themselves. Goal setting is extremely important for a canoeing athlete, as it is one of the most effective ways for them to improve. A reasonable level of motivation is required in order to complete goals. However, goals need to be achievable and not too outrageous in order for them to actually have an effect. There are long-term and short-term goals, both of which would have a positive effect if initiated correctly. Some examples of goals that could be set in canoeing could be setting a specific time to beat to improve speed. As there are many aspects involved in canoeing, it is important to have goals that cater to specific skills. Once again, it is up to the coaches to make sure that their athletes are setting appropriate and achievable goals in order to get the most out of their training. Evidently, there are many psychological factors that could be causing performance anxiety among athletes. However, as outlined in this presentation, by using these mental factors to your advantage, athletes could overcome this issue and perhaps even improve their performance. Although athletes have a lot of control over these mental attributes, it is also up to the coaches of the teams to provide appropriate feedback and implement working strategies to make sure they get the best out of their team. I hope this informative video has given you all some pro tips on how you and your team can succeed in the future. If you follow along with what has been said throughout this video, it won't be long until I see you at the Olympics. Until next time, farewell athletes, farewell.